mantras or chanting.
Ah.
The way I understood of mantras, and I never really got chanting. It was when I first started my spiritual path in the future sometime, because it hasn't actually started yet. When I first started my spiritual path, I would go to some events and they'd be chanting, and being a man of science was like, I just don't get chanting. And it was explained to me that there's lots of energy put in certain words over time. And being a wordsmith, that made sense to me. So there's lots of energy, negative energy, that's put into the word Hitler for a certain reason. And there's lots of positive energy that's put into the word God for a certain. So all these words, even if you don't understand the words mentally, or if you don't speak the same language of it, there's lots of chi, lots of positive, high vibrating energy that's put into these words. And even the children's book that I write, the pattern, the space, the pattern that the words are putting in, I'm setting intentions of putting high levels of chi into those words. Even if they're in a place, like sometimes I post stuff that doesn't make sense, but there's lots of chi in the rhythm or the space that they're putting in, even if it's absent of grammar.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
How are mantras and whatever else I was saying, chanting, how do they work for you?
Well, I have had some experience with mantras. I was reading the Ribu Gita, which is Gita means Song of God. So you have the Bhagavad Gita, you have a lot of Gitas that I can't pronounce their name, and I was reading the Ribu Gita.
At one point you'll Gita it. Get it? Gita?
Maybe. We'll see. But that whole book is a mantra. And Sri Ramana Maharshi, who is a revered sage from Arunachala in India.
That just made me hungry.
Recommended this book as a way to knowing the self, right? Because in Advaita Vedanta, the self is Brahman, and Brahman is the absolute, the infinite expanse of consciousness within which everything is appearing and disappearing. The creative power of the silence, that is the self. That is the self, says Advaita Vedanta. So he recommended this book for self-realization, and I've read through a lot of it, and it's not a book to like intellectualize about. It's a book that puts you in a very deep meditative state of mystical reverie. That's the only word that I can use for that. And in this book, you're basically reading like little stanzas, and it's I am Brahman, the one who keeps in mind always I am Brahman will realize. And it has many different ways of talking about it, consciousness and this and that. But basically, when you're sitting in meditation and you're repeating the thought, the mantra, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, and you concentrate on that, the vibration of the mantra starts to awaken energies inside of you, and it also starts to bring your attention to deeper levels of consciousness. You start taking a dive within the depth of consciousness. You start going beneath the level of, or the surface of perception. You know, you start to experience how full being is right now. So mantras are a very effective way to start diving beneath the surface. You know, it's a upaya, which in Buddhism means it's a pointing, it's directing you. You know, because when you think of God, what is God referring to? God is referring to something that transcends categorical distinctions such as space and time and finitude and causality and these sorts of things. So when you think of God and you repeat God's name, or with the Hare Krishnas, you know, the Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And then it goes on with the Hare Rama. But that is, you know, thinking and contemplating about something that transcends experience, something that is outside of time and space, and giving it life. That which is outside time and space is giving life to the experience of time and space, which can be tied in with the Kantian epistemology of space and time being pure forms of the sensibility. But anyway, thinking about or repeating God's name, whatever name of cultural tradition that is, whether it be Allah, Christ, Brahman, I am, the I am, that's a very important pointer for a lot of Hindu sects of philosophy.
And also it's very powerful in goal setting, even if you're an atheist, to use the word I am when you're making intention for who you want to be, being it now. Not with the ego, but in the everything I'm doing is transforming me towards that.
True. And Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj in the book I Am That once talked about, because a questioner had asked him, like, so, like, is it okay to emulate a sage if you're not a sage yet? And then Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, like, well, emulating it will eventually lead you to it. You know, if you do it sincerely and with the intention of becoming that, like you said, you're setting the intention. I may not be the sage yet, but I'm on my way. You know what I mean? And I think that is a very important thing to keep in mind, the humility of it, right? Because sometimes you can get lost in, like, oh, I'm enlightened and no one else is. But once you're really enlightened, then you see that everyone is enlightened in a certain sense. They may not realize it, but enlightenment is the shining of consciousness, and everybody's consciousness is shining, so everybody is enlightened. And certainly I have experienced periods of arrogance, and you know, I've had friends who have also, like, been like, yo man, like, before you start, like, acting like you're a sage, you have to silence your own mind. And that's not a necessity, but it's certainly a very important thing to keep in mind on this path is to remain humble and try to speak from your own experience and try to speak from a place of sharing, right? Like, I'm sharing with you a little bit of my own experience, and I'm also sharing with you a lot of the visions, the seeing of other people like Osho and Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, Sri Ramana Maharshi, Mirabai, Hafiz, Kabir, all of these people, you know, Tagore. You go on and on and on and on and on. So I'm just a vessel, a lover of life, a lover of wisdom, and I'm just sharing with you that love, you know what I mean? And sometimes I get lost in thinking that, like, oh, I'm a sage, but we're all sages, you know? We're all our own sage. You know, there's the sage in you, there's the sadhu in you, there's the mystic in you, you know? And I guess it's just different degrees of transparency, you know, but it's there, and it shines. And everybody, you hear in the Zen literature, like, once you awaken, everything is also awakened at the same time. This is what Zen Master Dogen said. You know, everything, once you awaken, everything is awakened. And why does he say that? Because you realize that the original face, your original nature is not hidden. It never was hidden. You can put a finger and cover the sun, but look, the sun's light is still everywhere, even though you're not knowing where the light's coming from because your finger's covering it. You know, you cannot cover up that shining. You cannot do it. No amount of ignorance does it, because the ignorance is also being illuminated in the sunshine of consciousness.
Can you feel that?